Are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening? Can you hear me? You need water! I swear, I feel like I want to scream this on the mountaintops right now. If you're watching this video, you are a living, breathing person. You can't live without water. I decided just a couple hours ago that I was going to make this video because it is so important, and I feel like there are still people who aren't paying attention. I don't care what religion you are or what side of the aisle you support. It doesn't matter if you rank amongst high income earners or low income earners. All over the world and in your hometown, there are floods happening, droughts, fires, heat waves. Regardless of what the potential tragedy could be, we need water.
You can't survive without water.
Am I being clear yet? I'm not smiling right now because I'm frustrated and concerned that there are still so many people who are choosing to not address the water situation. Initially, I wanted to wait to do this video until I had more time to research all the different options when it comes to storing water, but because of what's happening in the world and the concerns that I have even on the home front here in the United States, I am choosing to make this video with the things that I know right now because I feel the importance and the weight of trying to help others. The first thing that I want to cover is what should you store your water in? And remember, I'm going to be covering the things that I know. There are so many options. I couldn't possibly cover everything. So let me tell you what I have had experience in and things that I have had success with. We're going to start with storing water in large quantities. So I'm talking about a 275 gallon IBC tote. What does IBC mean? I don't even know. It doesn't matter. All I know is it's called a 275 gallon IBC tote. And that is, it's those big square tanks that are in a metal cage that are used to ship liquids. Instead of shipping the liquids and then sending the container back to be refilled, a lot of times what the companies will do is sell that used IBC tote. As long as they held food grade liquids, you're good to go. Some of the totes are used to store chemicals. You cannot use a tote that had chemicals in it because there's no way to possibly clean all the pores in that tote to make sure the chemicals are out. Another option for storing water is using a 55 gallon drum. You've seen what these look like. Traditionally, these drums are blue to show that they contain edible foods. Is that how I say that? That it is safe for human consumption. As opposed to when you think about a gas container, those are red. And the colors will show you what is okay to use as far as were there chemicals or no chemicals. When it comes to the 55 gallon drum, you're going to need a few accessories, such as a siphon hose to be able to siphon out the water from the top. You're going to need a bung wrench as well as a replacement bung. A bung is simply the circular cap that goes on top of your 55 gallon drum. Another way I like to store water are in 5 gallon jugs. These are the types that you would turn upside down and put onto a crock that has a spout attached to it. The 5 gallon jugs are great for storing water, but be careful. Make sure to store them upright, and you cannot stack them on top of each other unless you're using a storage rack. I don't recommend storing these in your garage, but if you do, keep those jugs off of the concrete. So either put them on cardboard or put them on some type of wood planks, because what happens is if you were to spill, let's just say gasoline or any other chemical on your garage floors, then those containers are going to absorb those chemicals and contaminate your water. The container can also absorb the chemicals used to make the concrete that you have them sitting on. So make sure to just elevate them off the floor to protect your water. Moving down the list, we have 2-liter bottles. This is what you would typically buy your soda in. So when you're done with the soda, you can put a little soap, rinse them out really well, and store water in them. One of the tricks that I like to do is Fill them with water, leave a little bit of headspace, so about this much space, so that there's room in the container for the water to expand, because I like to put them in my deep freezer. That way, if there's ever a power outage, I know that I have several of these 2-liter bottles in my freezer that are frozen blocks of ice, which would help keep my food frozen until the power came back on or until I can hook up a generator to it. You could also take out that 2-liter bottle that's a block of ice and let it melt down, and then you have drinkable water. If you didn't rinse out all of the soda that was in there, you run the risk of your water now tasting like that drink. Be aware that if you're using that water for cooking, you may end up with pasta that tastes like Dr. Pepper. Just make sure you wash them out well the first time and you'll be just fine. Another container that's great for storing water are the 32-ounce bottles that your Gatorade or your Powerade come in. You can reuse them. You can freeze them if you'd like. I would follow the same advice that I do for the 2-liter bottles and leave a little bit of empty space so that the water can expand if you choose to freeze. If not, they're a great size because you can really just kind of shove them in nooks and crannies around your house. Just make sure that you keep track of your water and where you have it stored in the house so that you can regularly rotate. And that's one of the key things that I want you to remember is when you store water for emergencies, it must be maintained. You cannot leave it and expect in 5 years for everything to be just fine. That water could have been punctured accidentally as you're moving things around your house. It could have leaked. It could have tipped over at some point and you were completely unaware because maybe you had it in the back of a closet somewhere. Write down where your water is, how much water you have, and then when was the last time you checked it. This is important. I need you to hear this. Do not store water in 1-gallon milk jugs. Why? That's something that comes in and out of our house, I know, very frequently. The problem with those jugs is that they are meant to be biodegradable, which means they're meant to break down over time. Imagine you have a bunch of 1-gallon jugs that you either bought with the water in them or that you bought with your milk, rinsed them out, and then put your water in, and you maybe put them under your bed. I don't want to be around when I go to pull those out and realize that I now have water damage and I need to replace my carpet, I need to replace the flooring underneath, and I need to bring in fans. Why? Because the water leaked over time and I wasn't aware. Those containers, like I said, are meant to break down. The key to storing water is that these containers need to be UV resistant and they also need to be food grade. Now, do I recommend storing water in smaller quantities? I don't, because imagine storing 55 1-gallon containers versus one 55-gallon drum. It's going to take a lot more space. I would much rather just do the drum and be done with it. Another option would be to do water bottles. These are also not meant to be around forever. You can store those for up to 2 years, but again, you should be rotating through this supply. As long as you have access to water, you should be replacing it as time goes on. I'm going to answer a few questions here. One is, does water expire? And my answer is no. Water does not expire, but it absolutely 100% could become contaminated. Which is why I've said it again, and I'll keep saying it throughout this video. You have to rotate the water. This is not like dried food storage where you use your oxygen absorbers and you put it in Mylar bags and you put those in 5-gallon food grade buckets and you set it and forget that for 25 to 30 years. That's not how water storage works. That is not how this works. Water has to be rotated. Your containers will sometimes need to be replaced depending on the condition of them and depending how you have them stored. There are pros and cons of storing your water in large containers versus small little 16-ounce water bottles. Let's go over those. For the larger containers, you typically store those outside, which is great because you're not taking up precious real estate within the home. You're not having to put things underneath, drawers and in the back of closets and things like that. It's outside, it's out of the way. As long as it's covered and shaded, you have to protect it from the sun. It's best to cover your outside water storage so that prying eyes won't see what you have. With the larger containers, yes, they are not portable. So these come in handy when it comes to a shelter-in-place scenario. Water in general is just not portable anyway. Say I wanted to bring a couple of cases of water. I'm certainly not hiking through a forest carrying cases of bottled water. The bottles of water are great if you're going to just really quick shove those into your car, and wherever you're going, your destination has water, because you will not be able to carry enough water to survive without a water source along the way. I know the 275-gallon IBC totes, when they're full, weigh over 2,500 pounds. Unless you have a forklift, that tote is not going with you if you need to bug out. Another downside to having the larger containers is that you will need more accessories. You will need a siphon hose to be able to get the water out, unless yours comes with a spout at the bottom. Having just the hole at the top of the IBC tote is just not convenient if, say, I need to use the water for showering. So make sure you have that siphon hose. Another positive element to having the smaller containers, such as the 16-ounce water bottles, is that they are tradable. You can certainly barter much easier when you have a small water bottle that you can exchange with somebody, as opposed to accessing your large container that's probably in your yard that you're going to need another container to transport to the person. You know what I'm saying. You could even poke holes at the top of your water bottle, and that can be used as a really quick shower. Just a side note, I come from a military family, and my siblings are ex-Marines. I remember my sister saying that the way they shower when they were out doing their hikes and things is that they would use baby wipes. That was their shower. They felt clean and they were ready to start another day. Now, my brother, on the other hand, recently told me that he has showered with a canteen. And if you know what a canteen looks like, it's a small container with water. And he said he has showered with that and still had water to spare. How much are you conserving your water? A downside to having the larger containers stored outside is that they are subject to getting contaminated with chemicals, whether that be radiation or another chemical that's in the air. The smaller water bottles and the smaller containers will likely be stored in your home, which means they are less likely to be contaminated. Just remember that they can absolutely leak if you have not stored them properly, meaning, did you stack them too high and the ones on the bottom are now leaking? Or maybe you didn't rotate them often enough. I'll say it again. Make a list of where you store your water in your house, make a list of how much water you have, and make sure you put dates on the last time you rotated through them. Is this everything you need to know about water storage? No! I would have to do a part 1, a part 2, a part 3 series, and they would be hours long. I am giving you information to get started today. These containers are containers you either have access to right now in your house, or that you can easily do a Google search and find a company in your area that sells these containers. I know that there's a company near me that's called Tank and Barrel. It's amazing. They are so helpful. They answer all your questions about water, and they're really excited to do it. They have a forklift with they have piled every container in every color, in every size, for any purpose that you can think of. I can't say enough good things about them, and no, they are not sponsoring this video. There are a few extras here that you need to know when it comes to storing water. You need to also have purifiers and filters. Why do you need to have both? Because if you are on the move and using water that you just find outside, you're going to need a purifier to make sure that that water is not contaminated and it's not going to do harm to your body by drinking it. You need a filter because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be drinking water and feel sand and grit and dirt inside of my mouth. That's where the filter comes into play. So both of them, I would say 50-50, it's equal. You need to have both. You can get life straws. Those are great for when you are on the go. In theory, that works. I have a really hard time thinking of myself getting on my stomach on the ground and drinking water straight out of the ground. It's designed to clean out that water enough that it's not going to make me sick to drink it. If I had to in an emergency, I would do it and I wouldn't think twice. It's something that I hope I never have to drink out of a life straw, because if I'm doing that, that means things have gotten really bad. Always have backup plans for how to purify your water. To clean your water, you can always boil it. Distill it. You can add drops of bleach. I found tablets that you can drop inside your water that does the same thing. Do a little research. There are so many items out there, and like I said, it's best to have multiple ways to purify and filter water. And make sure that you're applying it to more than one situation. Yes, you want to have water if you are sheltering in place, but you also need to have access to how to clean water, purify water, filter water while you're on the go in case you ever need to bug out. There's so much more to be said about water storage. The key takeaway is to have storage. If I had to and I turned on my water on the faucet and nothing was coming out, or it was very low pressure, I would absolutely be filling any container I can find, whether that is a milk container, whether that's my bathtub, whether that's the back of the toilet seat tanks, so that my family can have not only drinkable water, but water to bathe ourselves. Because in a water crisis, remember, hygiene becomes a very big issue because you no longer can take 10-15 minute showers. You can no longer take baths. How much water should you store? This is a very personal decision. You'll hear a 72-hour supply of water in case of emergencies. I feel like that is too low. I would aim at least for a 2-week supply. You will also hear a recommendation that it is 1 gallon of water per person per day. That is if all you're doing is drinking that water. What are you going to cook with? How are you going to bathe yourself? Even if you're doing a sponge bath, you still need water to do it. Do you have cats? Do you have dogs? Do you have birds? Do you have any living thing? Because your plants, your garden, anything that's living needs water. So that is something you need to take into account when it comes to how much water you should store. We do have a dog that we would like to keep alive. We kind of like him. So I have added him. He is like another person when we do our calculations for how much water we need to have. I have a garden. It's important to me that if we're in a water crisis, that I have water to be able to keep my garden alive, because that's going to be a source of food for my family. If you have a garden as well, one thing that you can do is get a very simple rainwater catchment system. If you have any type of gutter on your house, or even just a spot where the water comes down from your roof, you can absolutely put a 55-gallon drum right under there. There are filters to sit on top, and you can collect that rainwater. Now, I don't know of any states in particular that prohibit the capture of rainwater, but check your local city's regulations to make sure that it's okay to do. There can be times where the water in the sky is contaminated, like the fallout from like a nuclear bomb, in which case you do not want to be collecting and using that water. Like I said, when it comes to how much water you should store, I would aim for at least 2 weeks. I would feel much more comfortable doing a 1-month supply. I would do at least 3 gallons per person per day, and that is a minimum for me. The key here is get water storage. Are you paying attention to what's happening around the world? Mexico. I watched a clip on the news where there is a city in Mexico that I'm not even sure what happened, but they no longer have running water coming out of their faucets. And the video that they showed of the people living in this city holding any container that can hold water, it didn't matter the size, standing in these very long lines, they would all get up to the one spout that came out of the ground. That was how they were getting their water. And I'm telling you, the looks on their faces, the fear that I could feel through the camera just looking at them, because this was their only access to water. It's like I said in the beginning, nobody can live without water. Don't delay. This is one of the most important things you can do when it comes to preparing for natural disasters and even preparing for infrastructure issues. Not a lot of people are aware of this, but Google Mississippi and find out what's happening in Mississippi right now. There have been orders for them to not drink the water unless they boil it. And that has been in effect now for a month and a half. There are tens of thousands of people with no running water coming out of their faucets. And if they are getting any water, it's very low pressure and it's brown. My head hurts talking about this. They have no running water, where we are literally delivering cases of water, and they are handing that out to families. And it's so heartbreaking to think of that happening anywhere in the world, but the fact that it's happening here in the United States is very disturbing. My heart goes out to them, and I guarantee you, if any of them could go back 2 months, they would be filling up any container they can find with water. If there is one area of emergency preparedness that you do now, make sure it involves storing water. This isn't a very happy video, so I have to enjoy my ice cream while I can. Thinking about all the reasons why we have water storage can be slightly depressing. I almost forgot to mention that when you are purifying water, make sure you have something to mix inside the water that can flavor it. I like to keep on hand either Gatorade powder mix so I can get the electrolytes from that, or I'd go with the Kool-Aid Tropical Punch right there, straight up. You can always go with the more healthy hydration packets that you can pour into your water to flavor it and get a little more vitamins out of it. Heck, I would drink Tang even. I don't think I've had Tang since I was a very young child. Anything's gotta taste better than bleached water.